Hello everybody, welcome back to Croft, where we are getting ready for our next race of the day then. This, the Avon Tyres National Formula Ford 1600 Championship, which have already had one rather entertaining race today, this weekend, and we're anticipating another one here today, and indeed this is the first of two races today for these 1600cc single-seaters. There's your pole position man, Ross Martin, who won yesterday's race by 3.2 seconds in the end, and he was able to take the victory over Rory Smith, and therefore they will share the front row, Ross Martin and Rory Smith, side by side, with James Clark third on the grid and Neil McLennan in fourth. Jonathan Brown and Spike Colbecker will be on the third row of the grid, together with Jamie Sharp and Carter Williams row 4. Jamie Thorburn and John Svensson will share the fifth row of the grid ahead of Aaron Johnson and Morgan Quinn, with Adrian Lassac and Adam Quartermain on row 7, row 8 for Nicole Woods and Brendan Lee, the former E-racer, and Michael McPherson rounding out the 17-car entry. Always exciting racing in Formula Ford 1600s, and we anticipate more of that here today. Championship-wise, coming into this weekend, it was Ross Martin who had a very slender 3-point advantage over Spike Colbecker. Of course, that will have now increased because Spike was only 6th yesterday, and Ross was on top form and took top honours with the race victory. So today, it's all about whether Spike can take some points out of him. Neil McLennan also brought back into the championship equation a little bit as well with his solid 4th place finish. He was 3rd in the points coming in. As the lights go out, away we go. We're away and racing in the second race of the weekend for the Formula Fords. Good start made from pole position by Ross Martin by the looks of it. Rory Smith, though, in danger of losing second position to James Clark, who does go up the inside. So James Clark into second position then. Third place for Rory Smith, and it looks like Neil McLennan's lost out, maybe to Jonathan Brown, is that, who's into 4th position. So there has been a fair bit of shuffling then into the first corner in what is a short, sharp 15-minute race for the Formula Fords. Down the back straight they go. The slipstream starts to take effect, and Tower Corner at the end of this straight, one of the best overtaking opportunities on the whole circuit. Does anyone dive out of line this time? No, they don't. Oh, it's Spike Colbecker who's into 4th. So Spike Colbecker's had a really good start to get ahead of Neil McLennan and Jonathan Brown, so he's leapfrogged the entirety of the row in front of him. And Spike Colbecker, the American driver, who was definitely one of the favourites for the title this year, but having lost those points to Ross Martin yesterday, knew he had to get on with it. And there he is, the white and red car in 4th position, number 5, the man on the move in the early stages then. Through Sunny they go. Leading 2 just making a small break, but I don't anticipate that will last for too much longer. Although yesterday, as I said, we did have a 3.2 second winning margin for Ross Martin because he was able to sort of escape from the battling that was going on behind. Neil McLennan here coming back at Spike Colbecker though, and goes right around the outside through the middle part of the complex. Into 4th position then goes Neil McLennan. So Colbecker, I don't know what happened there, must have had a bad run out of Sunny, and ended up actually, rather than gaining a place, losing a place into the next sequence of corners. Behind him then is 1-2-2, which is Jonathan Brown, who's not had a brilliant start. He's doing his best to get back onto terms with them, but it's Ross Martin, no doubt, that leads the way. The second place being James Clark, where he is, the youngster. Most of these drivers, of course, fairly young. This is one of the early steps on the motor racing ladder for most drivers, fresh out of karting, their first single-seater racing action, most likely. And it still is the go-to formula if you want to hone your craft in single-seat racing, because they do not rely on aerodynamics. They're not the most powerful, they're not the most aerodynamic of cars actually, so the top speeds are not all that high, and that means you really have to rely on your racecraft in order to make it to the top. They move around a lot as well. It teaches you a lot about car control, and as you can see, it teaches you how to race within inches of each other without making contact, which is an important skill to have. Down to the Sunny complex comes this battle that's going on then for 4th position, with Neil McLennan having retaken 4th place, the position in which he started. Oh, very sideways through Sunny there. Behind them, by the way, Jonathan Brown's got Jamie Sharp, former British Formula 4 racer, all over him. And then behind them is the number 35 car, by the looks of it, of John Svensson, who's come from 10th on the grid. Now, John was disqualified from yesterday's race, unfortunately, for a driving standards issue. And then, following an appeal, reinstated into the results. That was an appeal that lasted basically until about half an hour ago when the final grid was published for this race. So whatever it was that he did yesterday, he got away with it in the end, and that meant that he was able to take up his 10th place starting position rather than having to start from the back of the grid. The white number 36 car making good on that, and he's starting to inch his way further towards the front now. So back through Hawthorne then goes the Jonathan Brown and Jamie Sharp pairing. They're sort of pairing off throughout the field here, aren't they, really? And rather than the one long train of Formula 4s that we sometimes see, we've got little pairs. We've got 2 for the lead, then 2 for third, and then sort of Spike Colbecker on his own in 5th, and then this fight for 6th position between Brown and Sharp. Jamie Sharp out of tower, in the slipstream. Can't really overtake through this part of the circuit though, especially in these open-wheeled cars. It's so easy to tangle wheels. You can see the way that the suspension of the wheels jut out quite a long way outside of the rest of the car. And that means that actually running side by side is not that easy to do, which you wouldn't know by how much they do race side by side with each other. But it can be a challenge sometimes to do so without making contact. Down to the complex we go again. There's John Svensson, the white car with the green flash on the front of his car. And this is all starting now to concertina together slightly, despite the fact that Jonathan Brown is defending busily here from Jamie Sharp. They are actually catching Spike Colbecker, who for whatever reason this weekend just does not seem to have the pace that we've seen on earlier rounds this year. And by comparison, championship leader Ross Martin, his big title rival, clearly does. He leads the way. He's just set the new fastest lap of the race as well. And he's starting now to inch away from Jamie Clark in 2nd place. Bit of a mistake there for Jonathan Brown, but still got over to the inside line at Hawthorne quickly enough to defend the position. Through the chicane, back down the back straight will go Jamie Sharp then, in the tow. Now Tower is probably the best opportunity to overtake, because you could use that slipstream. Big lock up there from James Clark. Now he will have most likely an awful flat spot now on that front right corner. That means locking up may well be something we see him do more of now as the race progresses. What was going on behind? Did Jamie Sharp make that move stick? No, he didn't. He's still behind Jonathan Brown. It's a very competitive field that we've got this year in the National Formula 4 Championship. A lot of drivers moved on after last year. It was one of those sort of transition years where we had a lot of big Formula 4 stars that were racing in the championship for the last couple of seasons, and they've now moved on to bigger things and left a new crop of drivers to battle in their wake. And that new crop of drivers are particularly competitive, and that's why we've seen so many different race winners this year. John Svensson there, I think, might have just lost a position, gained a position. I think he's into 8th place now, having found a way up the order a little bit further. Brendan Lee, I think that was that he was scrapping with. Brendan started 16th on the grid, so he's had a good start to the race. But yeah, very competitive grid we've got in Formula Ford this year, and that means that whilst overtaking is still a lot easier in Formula Ford racing than it is in maybe some other single-seater categories, it's not that easy, because the drivers you're racing with are equally as quick as you are, and so you tend to have to try and force a mistake out of the driver in front in order to find a way through. That's what Jamie Sharp's trying to do now, but Jonathan Brown doesn't make that many mistakes. Sharp is as close as ever though now as they go down the back straight. He's in the slipstream. There's Brendan Lee, so he is now ahead of John Svensson. So Brendan Lee, the white and blue car, really making good progress here from 16th on the grid. One of the leading rookies in the championship. In fact, I think he will be the leading rookie in this race now. He's ahead of Morgan Quinn, that's for sure, former Ginetta racer. The other rookie being Nicole Woods, but she's all the way down in 14th place. So yeah, definitely Brendan Lee, man on the move in the overall rankings, but also looking for perhaps another rookie class win. Former sim racer is Brendan Lee, and this is something we're starting to see more and more of these days. Drivers coming in from esports, from online gaming essentially, but it's a very professional business these days, and they're able to then apply that craft remarkably well to real life racing. Shows the advances in technology that we've had in recent years, and there really are quite a lot of parallels between the two. So Jamie Sharp here still can't get past Jonathan Brown, but I noticed Spike Colbecker in front was locking up a lot more now as well. So Spike possibly also running into some slight tyre issues. If you lock up that significantly and you flat spot your tyre, then every time you hit the brakes, the tyre will find that flat spot, and then it gets worse and worse and worse, and eventually you can lose the tyre altogether. So you have to manage that. These cars don't have the luxury of any braking aids. It's all down to the driver being able to manage those things properly. And if you don't, then you can find yourself in a whole world of trouble later on in the race. Through Tower Corner comes Neil McLennan. Now he's all over the back now of Rory Smith, so he has now caught the 3rd place man. This the fight then for the bottom step of the podium, leading to marching away now. Still Ross Martin leading the way, still James Clark in 2nd, and then this fight for 3rd, and McLennan might have found a gap. No, not quite. It's a brave man who tries to run wheel to wheel through Barcroft, the fastest part of the circuit, and indeed Neil McLennan decides better of that. Stays in 4th place for now. There's your race leader, the white car of Ross Martin. 2nd place, not a million miles away from these two, is he, James Clark? So it could be that if Smith and McLennan stopped tripping over each other, they might actually be able to catch the 2nd place man, but that takes a little bit of coordination between the two drivers. That doesn't seem to be happening right now. Similarly between these two, who are still continuing their battle, Jonathan Brown and Jamie Sharp. But no moves being made, no positions changing for the time being. Across the line they go. Brendan Lee in 8th position, not really making any huge inroads into this group either. Love that shot as they hit the curb. Well, some of them hit the curb, but unfortunately Jonathan Brown did not make friends with the apex there at Clervaux. Just drifted a bit wide, but the next little sequence through Hawthorne and then into the chicane is pretty much single file, so you can almost get away with a small mistake at Clervaux, as long as you don't give the driver behind the inside through Hawthorne. Again, he's having to really defend, look into Tower Corner. Jamie Sharp looks the quicker of the two. That can sometimes be as a result of the slipstream though, especially around a high-speed circuit such as this one. You can maybe flatter the car behind, make it look like it's quite a bit quicker than it actually is, but I think Jamie Sharp does have good pace, and if he could get past Jonathan Brown, might be able to chase after Spike Colbecker in front. Spike not able to live with the pace of these 3 cars ahead of him though. James Clark still in that 2nd place, ahead of Rory Smith and Neil McLennan. What has been a remarkably calm race so far, but we're still only 2/3 of the way through, and the final 5 minutes could be when drivers start to get a bit desperate, but they will be very mindful of the fact they have another race coming up later on today at around about 3:30, the 3rd and final race of the weekend. So any damage done to the cars now has to be repaired fairly rapidly to be ready for the final race of the weekend afterwards. So maybe that's on their minds perhaps. And after a couple of driving standards issues yesterday, maybe the clerk of the course has had a word with them as well. Big slide there for the 3rd place man, Rory Smith. Did well to... Sorry, the 2nd place man, James Clark, excuse me, did well to hang on to it. But look, he's definitely been reeled in now, hasn't he, by Smith and McLennan. So I think we can very much call this now a 3-way fight for 2nd place, because Smith is now in the tow and might actually be able to challenge for that 2nd place down into Tower Corner. This will change the dynamic of this little scrap now, though. If Clark starts to defend, it could maybe actually help Neil McLennan make a move on the middleman, Rory Smith. So 3 cars together now for 2nd place as they work their way through the Jim Clark S's. Back into Barcroft once again. Through the quick right-hander, over the curb, hit the brakes. Careful not to lock up and run wide. There's a bit of camber to the road through both parts of Sunny, so you can carry a bit more speed in there than you might think, but it's still very easy to run wide and lose all of your momentum onto this decent length straight down to the complex. Ooh, a bit of grass there for James Clark, gets a bit sideways. Formula 4 1600 cars not renowned for their rallycross abilities, and James Clark discovering that the black stuff is definitely grippier than the green stuff. Gets a bit slow through the hairpin as well. He's starting to mirror drive now. That means that his lap times are being affected as well, and I think he may well struggle to hang on to this 2nd place now, because Rory Smith is all over him. Looks to the inside at Clervaux. Is he close enough to make a move? Not quite, but clear. James Clark is all out of shape through the middle part of the corner. And another really good bit of car control. I suppose if you drive sideways around the track, that makes your car a bit wider, and that is making it very difficult for Rory Smith to commit to a move. He'd have loved to have dived up the inside there, but he wasn't entirely sure where James Clark was going. And behind, Jamie Sharp has finally managed to break through the defences of Jonathan Brown. So he's into 6th position now, as Neil McLennan, as I suspected might be the case, takes advantage of the squabbling going on in front of him to get up the inside now, and he's going to challenge for this 3rd position. Has he made it stick? Yes, he has. So Neil McLennan gets ahead of Rory Smith. Rory was so preoccupied with finding a way past James Clark that he left the door open for Neil McLennan, and the white and blue machine has now gone through. So Neil McLennan into 3rd. Can he get 2nd position? Neil arrived here at Croft on 186 points, which was some 23 points off the championship lead. He lost a few more points to Ross Martin yesterday, of course. And whilst it's highly unlikely that he, or indeed anyone, is going to be able to catch Ross Martin in this race, if he can get 2nd, it will limit the damage that's done points-wise, and it will mean that he starts right next to Ross Martin in the 3rd and final race a bit later on, which is a reversed grid race, is it not, for race number 3? Yes, it is. So they'll have a little bit of work to do, the pair of them, but if he can gain this position, they will start side by side, and that may well play into Neil McLennan's hands. He needs the points, after all. He decided that the circuit did not need that floppy marker on the left-hand side of the road. Then Neil McLennan clobbers it, sends it flying. And didn't seem to slow him up too much, and that will now widen the entrance to Hawthorne slightly for the rest of the race, which probably actually is only another couple of laps, because the 15 minutes has almost flown by completely now. A minute and 20 left on the clock. Big lock-up again there for James Clark in second place, but he hangs on to it. And actually with McLennan behind him, doesn't seem to be under quite so much pressure, does he? So McLennan may have gained one position, but that might be the last position that he is able to gain. Through the Jim Clark S's they go. Barcroft down the gears. You can hear the tyres screeching there. All of the cars running on grooved tyres as well. This is not a slick racing formula. So again, that slight lack of grip they have means the cars just move around that little bit more. And actually, James Clark's car moving around a bit more than Neil McLennan's through Sunny, and that means that any advantage he'd gained in the first half of the lap has swiftly been lost. And so the Cliff Dempsey racing machine under quite a lot of pressure now from Neil McLennan's Kevin Mills racing car behind. And behind both, Rory Smith in the BM racing machine. 3 different teams then contesting the bottom steps of the podium, but it's definitely looking good here for Ross Martin. Number 11 car, the Team Dolan run number 11 car. Looking good for a double race victory here at Croft. Further extend his points advantage. We go on to the final lap of the race then, in this 15-minute encounter. The second race of the weekend for the Avon Tyres National Formula 4 Championship. And is there anything that Neil McLennan can do here about James Clark for second position? He'll be in the tow, down the back straight. Tower corner is a potential overtaking opportunity. Can he do anything? He's not quite close enough though. And Kevin, it would appear, the Kevin Mills car I should say, it would appear he's not going to be able to find a way through into second place anytime soon, or is he? Because he's again very close through this high-speed section through the Jim Clark S's and the right-hander at Barcroft, but Sunny is such a risky place to try and overtake. You don't do a huge amount of braking into that corner. So the smaller the braking zone is, the less scope there is for out-braking manoeuvres. But again, Clark is a bit sluggish off Sunny, and McLennan pulls alongside into the complex. Now, can he go right around the outside through the left-hander? This is another brave move to make. He decides better of it, gets himself back alongside, but to the outside line, gets on the dirty side of the road, and that opens the door for Rory Smith to go back into third position. So a big mistake made there by the erstwhile third place man, and Neil McLennan will fall off the podium. The checkered flag meanwhile has flown, and Ross Martin has taken his second victory of the weekend. It was all though really about the scrap for the lower positions on the podium, and it was James Clark that took second. Rory Smith gets back into third in the final sequence of corners, and Neil McLennan will be kicking himself for that. So preoccupied was he with getting second place away from James Clark that he got on the dirty side of the road, and that allowed Rory Smith back through into third position. So in the end, it's the same 3 drivers on the podium as we had yesterday, just in a slightly different order. It's another victory for Ross Martin, and he will once again be joined by James Clark and Rory Smith, but in the opposite order from which they finished in yesterday's race, where it was Smith second and Clark third. This time Clark gets the better of Rory Smith, and it looked for a moment like they might be joined by Neil McLennan on the podium. That was not to be though. Ross Martin, though, has driven superlatively this weekend. Won the first race by 3.2 seconds. I think he won that one by even more. That was a really, really solid drive, that from Ross. And if he can get the hat-trick later on today, that will put him in not an unassailable points lead, but certainly a very healthy one as we move into the second half of the season. Confirmation then of the result. Martin takes the victory. James Clark 3.3 seconds back actually, so it was fractionally a more comfortable winning margin that time. Rory Smith is third, Neil McLennan fourth, and Spike Colbecker fifth, but he'll be a little disappointed with that, I think. Jamie Sharp got the better of Jonathan Brown to finish sixth. Brendan Lee was eighth, with John Svensson ninth, and Morgan Quinn rounding out the top 10. And confirmation there that Brendan Lee in eighth position was your lead rookie driver ahead of Morgan Quinn. So, great race all round then. Good to see some different makes of car at the front there as well. Van Diemen, Medina, Ray, Spectrum, all equally as quick as each other this year, it would seem. Confirmation there of the results outside the top 10 as well. Michael McPherson was 11th, Adrian Lassac was 12th, and Adam Quartermain, Nicole Woods, Jamie Thorburn. I think Jamie was a non-finisher actually, a couple of laps from home. So too Aaron Johnson and Carter Williams in their pair of 2013 spec Van Diemens. But out of his Van Diemen climbs our race winner Ross Martin. and he now pulls further clear in the championship race. And he is looking like very much the man on form in the middle part of the season. He will be joined on the podium by Rory Smith and James Clark, and down there to talk to all three of them is Bryn.
So as you see the drivers now parked up, just waiting for Ross to take his lid off, and then we'll dive in and grab a word from him. Very hot, very sweaty, as you'd imagine, these cars, even though they are open top. So let's dive in and grab Ross. Ross, if we can get a quick word, you can come round for us. A race that, for us watching you, that seemed like quite a nice, easy race for you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a nice, easy race.
Yeah, not as easy as yesterday. Getting a very good start, better than yesterday's. And
Well, a few issues there, I think, with the camera and the microphone down in the pit lane, so we could see what was going on. But we couldn't hear from Bryn, unfortunately, there, so hopefully we'll get that fixed for you momentarily. We've got more racing coming up, though, for you, and that will be with the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup coming up next, but let's see if we can now head back down to Bryn in the pit lane.
We'll try it again. Got sound this time. So, Ross, it seemed like quite an easy victory for you.
Yeah, not as easy as yesterday. Getting offline was key. You know, I made a really good start compared to yesterday and made the jump into turn one. I seen that James got by Rory into turn one, and obviously that meant I had a little bit of fresh air, but again, up to Toward, you know, I had to have my mirrors, you know, wide open. You know, James was there to push me, and again into sunny in and sunny out, it was there. But my first two stage laps were strong, you know, qualifying laps almost, and I think I smashed the record again, so that's key. Definitely consistency as well. I think I went four laps in a row without being out of 10, so I think I found my gap there, and then again it was just bringing it home. Seeing the guys battling behind me last maybe 3-4 laps, I thought I'll just cruise to the end here, make sure the car comes home.
It's always quite nice when you have people behind you battling out, because you know they're defending and attacking. Gives you a bit of space, a bit of freedom to think.
Yeah, I think I'd like to thank the team when I came out there, and I was pushing qualifying laps, in the middle of a race. So yeah, big hats off to them guys. I really appreciate that, and obviously all my friends and family have made the trip down to support me this weekend.
One more to go. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Well done to our race winner. Let's go over to third place. Why not? Let's get Rory. Oh no, Rory's been spoken to there. James is here. James parked out of order. It's all very confusing. Well, that was an interesting one for us watching there, because of course you couldn't gain on the race leader, but you had your own battles going on there.
Yeah. I kept with Ross for a few laps, but he just started to creep away, and yeah, I mean, they found some serious speed, because I was going faster in that race than I did in qualifying on brand new tyres. So that also just shows how good a job Cliff Dempsey Racing have done on the car, because it works over the whole lifespan, and the car was mega. But I could see that they weren't fighting, and I knew that they would be catching a little bit. And I think once they got sort of into the toe, then it was just like a mad three-way fight for the last few laps.
And some nice sideways driving as well.
Yeah, well, Cliff will be on to me about that, because he's always saying, you got to be smooth, and yeah, I might have been a little bit sideways a couple of times.
Doesn't matter, you got a second place, well done.
Thank you. Thanks.
And let's have a quick word then with third place driver. Well done to Ross. That was a really, Rory, sorry, I'm looking down here at Ross. Well done, Rory. That was an amazing race. Took it on 2 corners to go. Perfect timing. You wrote the script.
Yeah, I spent the whole sort of race just trying to catch up to James, and luckily Neil was helping out, and he was pushing me along when he got up to the back of me. I mean, Neil was flying, and he managed to catch up to me even when I had James's toe, so he was quick. And then that allowed us together to both get up to the back of him. And at that point, I tried to make an overtaking manoeuvre, which unfortunately didn't work off and actually ended up going backwards. So I sort of just bided my time behind the two of them. They're looking quite scrappy, and I thought, oh, this could end up with them both being spat off and me inherit the second, which happened to an extent. I got the third. But yeah, no. Not much better it could have been on the last few laps, but yeah, it's a shame that Ross was so fast and left us for dead, but that's what it is, I guess.
Well, you have to wait sometimes, don't you, and see what's going on ahead of you, and then take advantage when the opportunities come, and that's what you did, so well done, third place.
Thank you very much, cheers.
There we go, an amazing race once again from the Formula Ford guys, and they're back out again a little bit later on. We've got another race coming up, thick and fast here for you here in Croft, so back down to our race commentator, Andy McEwen.